beyond the sky. How can you dare to try? How can you fight through doubt and fear? How can you make your path clear? Ask how, and your power will rise.
Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're jumping into a pretty incredible story of survival. It's all about how one tiny island nation, staring down a truly impossible water crisis, basically engineered its way to safety. This is how Singapore turned its biggest weakness into one of its greatest strengths.
So, let's kick things off with the big question, the one that for Singapore was literally about survival. How on earth do you get enough water for millions of people when you're packed onto a tiny island that has almost no natural water to begin with? I mean, this wasn't just some textbook problem. This was about the nation's very existence.
To really put that into perspective, just look at this number, 1.43%. That's it. That's the tiny fraction of Singapore's land that makes up its entire water resource area. With that little space to catch and store rain, you can see why they were in a tough spot from day one.
And this quote from Singapore's founding father, Lee Kuan Yew, just says it all, doesn't it? It shows you that water was never just another utility. It was, and it still is, the absolute foundation of their national security. Everything, and I mean everything else, had to come second.
So, how did they pull it off? How did they tackle this huge challenge? Well, there was no single magic fix. Instead, they built a complete master plan. And the foundation of their water security is this famous strategy, the 4 national taps.
The whole idea here is to have a bunch of different sources so you're never too reliant on just one. The first 2 are kind of the old school ways, catching as much local rainwater as you can and importing water from Malaysia, which politically was a tricky situation they knew they couldn't depend on forever. But taps 3 and 4, that's where the real game-changing innovation comes in. We're talking about NEWater, which is super high-grade recycled water, and desalination, which turns the ocean right next door into a limitless, drought-proof tap.
Now, to get those taps flowing, Singapore had to get to work on some of the most ambitious engineering projects you can imagine. And what's so brilliant is how they did it in 2 ways at once, creating this invisible, high-tech world deep underground while totally transforming the city you see on the surface. Let's start with the unseen giant. It's called the Deep Tunnel Sewerage System, or DTS. You can think of it as the secret backbone of their entire recycling plan. It's a massive superhighway for used water, built way down below the city and engineered to last for 100 years.
And here is the absolute genius of its design. It's this huge 206-kilometer network, right? But it mostly gets rid of power-hungry pumps. Instead, it just uses the simple, totally reliable force of gravity to channel all the city's used water to where it needs to go. And this one single project has so many benefits. By getting rid of old pumping stations, it frees up 150 hectares of super valuable land. It makes sure there's a steady stream of used water to produce their NEWater. And because it's so deep underground, it gets rid of the risk of spills polluting their precious rainwater. It's a win-win-win.
Okay, so that's the hidden marvel working away beneath their feet. But what they did up on the surface is, in its own way, just as amazing. They totally reimagined the city's relationship with water.
This whole vision is called the ABC Waters Program. The goal was to take all that purely functional stuff, concrete canals, drains, reservoirs, and turn them into active, beautiful, and clean spaces that people could actually go out and enjoy.
This quote really gets to the heart of it. This wasn't just about making things look nice. It was a huge mental shift from keep people away from the water to let's bring them closer, making water a core part of community life.
And you can see it everywhere. A boring concrete drain becomes a beautiful, natural-looking river. A reservoir that was just a big holding tank is now a hub for kayaking and dragon boating. It's all about making water something you cherish, not just something you manage.
So you've got this unbelievable technology and this beautiful design, but that's still not the whole picture. The next, and maybe the hardest step, was to change the most complex system of all, people. Because really, all this incredible engineering would be for nothing if people didn't buy into it. Singapore knew that for this whole thing to work, they had to make every citizen feel like they were part of the solution. That right there is the real secret sauce. And they have been building this culture for decades.
It starts with kids in school, where saving water is just part of what you learn. It's on your appliances with mandatory efficiency labels, and it even brings communities together, with projects where people can adopt and take care of their local waterway.
But they didn't just rely on goodwill. Oh no. They also used one of the most powerful tools out there, money. They priced water to reflect what it really is, a scarce and precious resource.
They do this with something called an increasing block tariff. The logic is actually super simple but really effective. The first chunk of water you use each month is at a standard rate, but if you go over that limit, the price for every drop after that jumps up. It sends a really clear message: save water and you'll save money.
And does it work? Oh yeah. The results of this whole strategy are just undeniable. Daily water use per person fell from 165 liters back in 2003 down to just 141 by 2019. Now, when you multiply that by millions of people, that is a massive, massive saving. So what's the big takeaway from all of this? Well, as more and more cities around the world are facing water shortages, Singapore's story is basically a blueprint for how to build a water-secure future.
So here it is, the recipe for water resilience, Singapore style. You start with a clear, long-term vision you never give up on. You invest big in deep tech. You mix in creative urban design that actually brings nature back into the city. And then, the most important ingredients, you price water for what it's worth, and you make every single person part of the team.
Which kind of brings us to one final thought. Singapore had no choice but to build this water security from absolutely nothing. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? How future-proof is the water supply where you live? I'm really curious, what part of this story stood out to you the most? The mind-blowing engineering? Or the way they focused on community and nature? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And hey, if you found this explainer helpful, do us a huge favor and hit that like button, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more deep dives like this. Thanks so much for watching.
How can you reach beyond the sky? How can you dare to try? How can you fight through doubt and fear? How can you make your past clear? Ask how, and your power